Hello and good afternoon. I'm going to do a live today from our factory over in Upton, and I'm going to talk to you about puppies because we've had quite a few people in this week, new puppies in their homes, in their families' lives, that we get lots of questions asking us. How do I go about feeding a raw diet to a puppy? Can you feed raw to a puppy? My vet says you can't. They've come on a raw diet. What do I do? So hopefully this will help to banish some of those things that you've heard. And this is how we would do it at Nurturing by Nature about introducing your puppy to a raw diet. So there's a couple of ways that this puppy may have come into your life. It may come already reared on a raw diet, which is amazing because that is a bonus for you, because that is going to make your life an awful lot easier. But not all puppies come reared on a raw diet, and some come with a list of instructions as long as your arm. Hello, Mrs. Holmes. And they come with a list of instructions as long as your arm, and really, this is your puppy now. So you need to make sure that you choose and do what you need to do for your own pup and for your lifestyle and how it works for you. So can you feed puppies and kittens a raw diet? And the answer is yes, absolutely you can. Some arrive with their new home already reared on a raw diet, and some arrive with a bag of dry food and no clue. And some puppies will just come along because not every situation is the same. However, if you want to rear your puppy on a raw diet, you absolutely can. So hopefully this will give you a few ideas on how you can do that and how you can adapt what you do with your puppy for your own situation. So it all does depend on where the puppies come from in the first place. Come from a breeder, come from a rescue. So they come from all over the place. They come into our lives when they've been sent to us necessarily, or they're the right ones for us. This is how it sort of happens for you. And let's say this scenario, your puppy comes to you. It is reared on a raw diet. There's absolutely no reason why you can't carry on with that. You should definitely continue with it. Find out the type of food that the puppy's been having. Some companies make like a small fine paste that you can give. Now our food is absolutely 100% appropriate for a raw fed puppy, raw fed adult dog. We don't put anything with it. Our food is not complete, so we do advise you feed a variety, but this is how you would start your puppy off on our food. So there's a couple of things that you can introduce and have in with the food, which are nice things to have but not essential. So let's say this puppy's arrived with you. It's already reared on raw. Find out from the breeder what sort of food it's having and what it's already tackling, because some will come to you and they will be already eating bones. These puppies will be eating bones already. That's already done the job for you. It's made it a lot easier for you. If not, they've just started on a mince and maybe some milk, potentially milk, mince, bit of white fish. Who knows what they've come on, but find out if you can. Find out from the person you've got your puppy from what they're currently eating, how many meals a day that they're having. You obviously should know how old the puppy is, but sometimes that can be incorrect information, can't it? We've all heard those stories where he was far too young to leave the mum, but it's all got to be what's right for you. So we would start off on the chicken as we do with an adult dog or a puppy, and you would feed the amount of meals that your dog needs. So we're looking at puppies here. So ideally, you may want to feed about sort of 4 meals a day when you first bring them home, because they've got little tiny tummies. They need to do lots of resting, and they need to have the time to process that food because their tummies are so small and they're not used to eating one great big meal a day. Lots of little meals throughout the day, which is what they've used to been having with their mummy. That's what they need. So lots of small meals. So you would feed them appropriate for their weight. And puppies and kittens can have a huge amount of food, because when you first bring them home, that is when they're doing their most growing. So they can have up to 10% of their body weight in meat per day, and that doesn't include extras that you give at this age. So a puppy, for example, a 4.5 kilo puppy, new to a raw diet, we can feed up to 10% of its body weight in meat per day, which is 450 grams, which is a lot when you look at the size of the puppy and the amount of food, which is why you spread it out over lots of meals. So this is 500 grams here. That's one of our 500-gram packets, and that is just a plain chicken mince. And that was actually the one that we would start you off on. We do this in a smaller packet, which is 200 grams, and that might suit you better. But yes, puppies would start off on the chicken. You can put some milk with it if you want to, some goat's milk. That's really easy for them to digest. The fat molecules are a lot smaller in the goat's milk rather than cow's milk. So yeah, we're going to go for up to 10%. So a 4.5 kilogram puppy would 450 grams. Now, it's not to say that your puppy needs to have as much of that. They can have up to that amount. So if you find that your puppy doesn't want to eat all of it, don't freak out. Feed a smaller amount and just monitor how the pup is doing. So if you know he's, they go through different stages. So they go through phases as they grow where they need a bit more food and then they need less. Like typically we get people coming into us and say, oh, it's gone off the food, I don't know what to do. And I generally ask how old they are, and sometimes they're at 5, 6, 7 months old. It's because they're not doing the growing that they need, and that's why at tiny puppy stage you can feed up to 10%, because that is the time that they're doing all their growing. And when you first bring your puppy home, you notice how quickly they almost sort of double in size in the first couple of weeks when you brought them home, because that is when all that growing and all that work within their bodies is happening. So feeding them with a really good diet, really easy diet for them to digest, is a really great start for your puppy. And we've got friends who've got their dog. He is probably one of the only ones in the litter that was taken home and put onto a raw diet. And they can see a difference in him compared to his siblings. He just grew better. He just looks better than his other pups in his litter. And they do meet up, and you can see the difference on a raw-fed, raw-reared puppy. It's amazing. So, yep, you can add in goat's milk if you want to. There's lots of things you can do. And then lots of people ask, what do you do about treats? So when you've got a small puppy, they're having up to 10% of their body weight in meat per day, you can use the treats and inside that amount, or you can add them on top. I wouldn't worry too much, because this is when they're doing their most growing. When they get a bit older and they're having a marrow bone every other day, you need to stop giving them so much in that sense, because they will then start to put on too much weight. So puppies have treats as part of their allowance potentially, but they can also have it as an add-on, because this is the time they're using up all that energy in growing. So don't worry too much if they get a little bit extra than they would do, or would be ideal for you. And treats, different people want to rear their puppies in their homes however they want to. It's up to you. It's your puppy. You do what suits you best. Not everybody wants to train their dog or their puppy with food. Some people will use other methods. Don't forget that there's three, you've got food, you've got touch, you've got your speech, you've got eye contact. These are all forms of a reward for your pet, for your dog especially. People might choose to do positive training with them by not using food, by using a clicker. So it all depends on what suits you, and it'd be a really good thing to do before you take your puppy home, is to research on what suits your lifestyle best. If you want to find a good trainer, find out about them, maybe they might have a website, maybe you could go along to see a session, that sort of thing. You could go along for that. That would be great. But you need to find somebody that works for you, works for your dog, and that you agree with, and they get on with well. So that's what you need to do for a puppy, and not all methods suit everybody. So do what works for you, your puppy, and your family. So feeding a puppy on a raw diet is absolutely 100% appropriate. We would start you off on chicken for the first week, like we do with the adult dogs, and then we would then go on to feeding different proteins over time. We do have feedback from vets. It could be your brother in the background. So you start off on a chicken with us. That's what we would start you off on. And then what is a really good way of doing it as well is to keep a diary. So you know what you've fed, and if there's any issues, you can pick it up by going back to the diary and saying, they had this time, and they didn't get on so well with that. You can feed bones to a puppy. You might introduce them after 4 weeks or so, depending on how the situation is with the pup when it came into you. It might even already come eating chicken wings or something like that. Chicken wings like this. Here, these are the little chicken wings. You can pick those up. You can also get things like the carcasses. This is a nice soft bone This is probably even more appropriate for a puppy than the wings, because these carcasses are really soft. This is the rib cage of the animal. There's meat on there. There's bone in there as well, but it's really soft bone. These are very young birds by the time they go through the slaughtering process. So they're very young. They're not that old. So the bones haven't fully the ossification of the bones hasn't fully formed. So they're nice and soft. There's lots of cartilage on here. This part here is all cartilage. Very flexible when it's defrosted. All this would be great for your puppy because it's good for their brains and it's good for their tummies. Easy to digest because it's chicken. So definitely consider putting your puppy with that. They can have that probably from 2 to 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks home with you, not from age 2 to 3 weeks. Really, that'd be absolutely fine. And choosing the appropriate size bones for the size of your puppy is really important as well. So these are marrow bones. These are our medium ones. These are quite small, but that would be good for, say, a Labrador or something like that. You've got that. You've got the marrow in there. You've got the meat on the bone. You've got the bone. Then you can restuff this as well. And that's another thing. So keeping your puppies interested, and don't forget they do a lot of sleeping when they first come home to you, because that's when they do all their growing, their brains develop, their bodies develop. So it's fine for puppies to sleep. They kind of eat, sleep, play, and that's what happens when you first get them home. And you forget how quickly that time goes, but that is generally what happens when you first get a puppy back home again. So you would increase the amount they're having as they grow. So it's a really good idea, if you can, to weigh the puppy on a weekly basis just to see how they are developing in weight, and make sure that it's going up nicely, not too quickly, not too slowly, and that they're happy with how they're putting on weight and how they're doing and how they're growing. You can usually use the vet scales, so quite often they're happy for you to go in and use them. I don't know if they would charge for that. We've got scales in all of our stores. There's quite a few pet shops I imagine would have scales in that you can use, because they're a really good guide on how much to feed using the scales. So yeah, try and weigh your puppy maybe at least once a fortnight if you can't do it weekly. And then the other thing is you need to expose them to loads of things when they're little. So even before they've had their vaccinations, take them with you. You can carry them. It's a really good excuse to go to the pub. Take them with you to the pub. Lots of smells, lots of noises. That's when they do most of their learning. So they do so much at this tiny, tiny age. They're so small, but they are growing and they're learning so much. The more you can expose them to in that time, the better, as long as it's safe for you and safe for them. So starting the puppy off on chicken, absolutely appropriate. We have got things like goat's milk that you can mix in with that if you're worried about it being a bit too hard. You can half this and put this with some chicken breast if you want to. Again, for the smaller breeds of puppy, that might suit you better. Generally though, puppies and kittens are really easy to get onto a raw diet because they're happy to take the food. They're not so fussy. They just get it on because they've got all that growing to do. So it's a good time to introduce your young animal to a raw diet, is when they're little like this. So puppies and kittens can definitely start off their lives on a raw diet, and our diet's absolutely appropriate. We've reared plenty of puppies over the years, feeding them a raw diet, and we see so many obviously in the store. We always start you off on the chicken, and we would just tend to go along the same basis as you do for an adult dog. So start on the chicken, then we introduce different proteins over time. So for week 1 we do chicken, week 2 we do chicken plus maybe another protein or 2. Week 3 we're looking at maybe 3 proteins and the chicken as well. And then even in week 3 we could look at introducing these lovely carcasses to give their little sharp teeth something to do, because they do enjoy chewing on these. Generally they know what to do with them once they've had it for a while. We have had some older dogs that are not got a clue the first time they've had one of these, but they soon work it out. They'll take sort of 7-8 minutes the first time, and then the second time it's gone in a snap. So they're so clever, our pets, they really are. So after about week 4, you'd be feeding different proteins, and then you could introduce some of the lighter bones. So maybe you wouldn't go in for hard, heavy bones that they can consume, like the ribs potentially, that you can do chicken wings, you've got necks, you've got duck necks, maybe some turkey necks. The bigger birds are obviously going to be a heavier bone, so bear that in mind, but you need to feed appropriate for the size of your puppy. So you've got a Chihuahua, you're probably not going to be feeding it beef ribs straight away. But a Labrador puppy would absolutely be fine on beef ribs after about 5 weeks. There's no reason why they can't have that. So this is our chicken. There's 500 grams, and like I said, we do smaller ones as well. And there's lots of things at Nurturing by Nature that you can do to help introduce a puppy nicely to your home. You've got things like the so we went over a little while ago about the fireworks using the valerian. You can use that in your home when you're getting a new puppy or changing the environment. So it might even be worth something to think about if you've got a young dog who's never seen a Christmas tree before, to bring the valerian into their life as well as the Christmas tree, because they need to be able to chill out and get used to something. It's quite a big thing having a great big tree come up in the corner of the room. Some dogs are fine with it, some dogs freak out. So yeah, just bear in mind that things that we're completely used to, your dog may never have seen before. So introducing them to them slowly and positively is a really good thing. So using things like the valerian or the calm extra or the pet remedy, they're really nice ways to just give the environment a sort of safer feel. They like it. It's nice in the environment. You can use the spray, you can use the plugs. They can digest the meat really easily. They can break it down even when they're little. So you don't need to worry about that. They should be absolutely fine. And then balancing the food out over time, that's another important matter. So if you're feeding a very bony meal, for example, when they're a bit older, they're having a lamb rib, then we're going to balance it out with maybe some fish that hasn't got such a high bone content in it, so that you make sure that your dog's tummies settle nicely when you're feeding a raw diet, a nice balanced diet over time. And there isn't really anything you need to avoid either. Now, some people say that, you mustn't feed chicken, you mustn't start your dog on chicken because it's going to create allergies. Well, I've had a good chat with Mum about this, and we're not quite sure where it originates from. However, we can say that we've had many dogs reared on a raw diet, and we always start them off on chicken. And even if you have a look up online, some of them actually suggest that chicken is a really appropriate meal for a dog. So hopefully that isn't such a big thing anymore. But yes, we had it this week that you couldn't feed chicken. They could feed turkey, they could feed beef, they could feed lamb, they could feed tripe, but they mustn't feed chicken, because if you feed lots of chicken, then you're going to develop an allergy to chicken. If you feed lots of anything, you're going to develop potential issues with that thing, because that's all they're having, and they're not getting vitamins and minerals from elsewhere, which is why we advocate feeding a balanced diet over time. So yeah, we did have that the other day, that we shouldn't feed chicken with our puppy when we bring him home, but I think that's been squashed really. They should be absolutely fine to feed chicken. There might be some dogs out there that have got allergies or intolerances to certain proteins. You'll find that out as you go along. That is a very valid point that people have said, but however, you will find that out as you go along. Keep a diary. That's one thing you should do. Keep a diary. Make sure that you're aware of what your pet's having, what they've reacted to, even down to things like the treats. You might give them a treat that they don't get on with. Good to be able to pass that information on to the rest of the family. Avoid this for a certain amount of time. And then what about treats for puppies? So some people will choose not to treat their puppy, but some people like to have something for them to do. So I've got a couple of examples here for you to have a look at of ideas of things. And the other thing I've heard actually is to look for low protein treats for puppies as well. Well, when you're feeding a natural diet and a raw diet, the most sort of lower protein part of the diet is actually like the raw food. That is lower in protein than a lot of the treats. If you have a look at a lot of the dried natural treats, they're really quite high in protein because they've been dried out and they're concentrated. So if you're looking for a lower protein treat, maybe you should consider feeding something like this as a treat with the chicken carcasses, because when you look at a lot of these treats, so I went through them earlier, so that one was the lowest that I could find, along with this here. But you've got things like dried rabbit ears. They are a great treat for your dog. They're quite hard, really suitable size for a puppy. Good for their sharp teeth to get into. But yes, the protein in this is 56.5%. And generally, most of the raw treats that we've got I've been through, most of them about 50, 60, 70% in protein because they've been dried, because it's a concentrated product. You know, it'd be like if you compare it to something that we might use, like squash, for example, you would dilute it down because it's been concentrated, and this is sort of how it is with the treats as well. So there's no reason why you can't use treats like this alongside a raw diet really nicely, but just bear in mind, if you're looking for low protein treats, they'll be harder to find when you're feeding nice and natural foods. It'd just be better to feed less of them, basically. When we used to do the puppy training at the vets, one of the best treats that we found was this, which is our stinky sticks. So it used to be quite arduous. However, the puppies would do anything for these. These are really high reward. And personally, I think they're better than feeding things like frankfurters or cheese. Cheese is okay in moderation. I'd rather that than the frankfurters. But this is great. This is dried tripe. Now, when you are rewarding a puppy, you kind of want something that's going to be an instant reward so that they crack on and do whatever it is that you want them to do next. So you can cut these up, but they're quite hard to cut up. So I'd recommend using some garden secateurs with these. So these are the dried tripe sticks. We call them stinky sticks. They're really popular. They're full of good bacteria. They're good, nice, natural treat. Easy for the dogs to digest. Most of them absolutely love them. We don't like them so much because they smell. They are tripe. That is the inside of the cow's stomach, and you can see all the patterns on this one here, all the parts of it where the cow digests the food and holds on to and filters everything out. But yeah, take some secateurs of these and chop these into hundreds of tiny little pieces, and then you've got a really high smelly reward that your dogs will absolutely love. So that's a really good trick with those. If you want something at home that's not quite as smelly, that you're happy for them to have in the house, in the home environment, these are good because they don't tend to stain the carpet. This is just the dried cow ear. You can buy these individually in the shops as well because we've got them loose in the pick and mix boxes. But these are a pack of 5 and they're about $4.50 for the 5. Dried cow's ear. All treats may stain, so you need to bear that in mind, but these are quite low odour. So if you want something in the house that doesn't smell as much, this is low odour, and this one here. And you're just basically giving your puppy a nice treat that's going to keep their brain occupied and their teeth occupied, because their teeth are really sharp. And when you react to the puppy and squeak, go, ow, that's actually a bit of fun for them. So giving them something else harder to chew on that's not hurting you is always a great idea. So looking at natural treats, like I said, you can't really find too much natural-wise. Even just the freeze-dried products, they're quite high in protein as well. So this one here, 46% protein, which is lower. Excuse me. So this is a freeze-dried product. You get loads in here. They're very inexpensive. They don't really smell. And it's freeze-dried raw. And that's 100% turkey. And you get different flavours of those. Excuse me. But, you know, looking at the treats through the system that we've got, generally most things have got fairly high protein. But you don't need to worry too much as long as you're not feeding them excessively in, you know, huge quantities. That when you are feeding the puppy and you're treating them all the time, it's good to find something that works for you and works for them. These are the 2 in our shelving that are the least, really. So that is venison strips. So I would have thought venison's going to be really high in protein because it's really rich meat, but that one's only 41% protein. And these are sausages, 41%, 91% pork in here, 30% protein. So these might be quite a good one to chop up for lots of reward treats if you're looking for a lower protein, but it's up to you. I'm just gonna have to get a drink, sorry. I apologise, sorry about that. I've got a tickle in my throat. So yeah, the other thing that is worth noting with puppies is quite often puppies and children go hand in hand. A lot of people get puppies when they've got children or younger adults in the house. So you just need to bear in mind the safety issues around that. Remembering to involve your children in the correct training of the puppy as well. But not only that, how you treat the food and how you treat the pet in the environment, because although all of our food is tested for bacteria, when it gets home to you, we can't control how you look after it or how you keep it in your house or how quickly you feed it. So we always recommend that you defrost it in a leak-proof container in the fridge. So our packets shouldn't leak, but just in case they do, you put it into a leak-proof container in the fridge, defrost it in the fridge where it's nice and cool. It will take longer to defrost, but that's okay because you are controlling it. You're looking after the safety of that product. So this mince here, if you were to put that in the fridge, it'd probably be defrosted in just over a day, realistically, if your fridge is nice and cold. If you were to leave that out on the side, you'll defrost it in, I don't know, a couple of hours potentially, depending on the temperature. And the temperature that it sits at, and as it defrosts, is what creates extra bacteria. So if you defrost it below 5 degrees, bacterial growth will be lower and slower. If you leave it out on the side, it will go off quicker. So it'll go smellier quicker. And generally, we would use this up in the fridge after a couple of days. We wouldn't want to leave it in there for much longer than that because it's been open and exposed to the air. It's not in its protective packaging, and we don't gas flush our products. We don't put any gases in here to preserve the product and make it all pink and lovely. So once you've opened it up, it's exposed to the elements, you will find it, it will change colour the longer you leave it out, the longer you leave it in the fridge. Dogs have got really good coping mechanisms for bacteria, but you need to bear in mind this is about children and dogs, and dogs will inevitably lick children's faces or lick anything, won't they? They also lick other parts of their body. So you need to try and make sure that you are aware of that. The dog in your children's environment. So raw food, as with any food, will contain some sort of bacteria the longer it's left out. Even like the dry food that you can buy, the fats over time develop the bacteria. So there's no way of avoiding it. You just have to treat this meat as meat in your own home as you would do the meat that you eat yourself. So just treat it respectfully and look after it before you feed it, really, because the longer it's left out, even if you leave it out on the side, the longer it's left out, the more bacteria and the more harmful it might be. But generally, all of our products are actually tested. So we send everything away to be tested at a laboratory, and the bacteria levels are really, really low. It's really safe meat. We don't buy anything in from people that we don't know. We always use good suppliers. So our food is tested and every batch is tested, and we do representative sampling throughout the processes of making the food as well for every batch. So every batch that we do, we test as well, which might mean the boxes that come in, we might take representative samples for each of the boxes, like each of the dough labs. They will have samples and we keep them as well. So if there's any issues, we can send it off for a second test if necessary. So we're really, really safe. Our food is really safe. We look after it. We do everything as we should do correctly for our license. So just rest assured that everything is tested and it's nice and safe. It's just down to you. So when you take it home and you look after it in your own home and your fridge is at home, you need to do it correctly like you would do with your pet. And although the expiry date on here relates to whether it's been in when it's in a freezer, so used by 18th of January 24, this one here, 18th of the 10th. So we get a year on it in the fridge, basically, a year on it in the freezer. So our food is frozen for a year until you should use it up by. I mean, we never have anything in our fridge for longer than that. It's meat at the end of the day, and we defrost it in the lowest part of the fridge to stop it from contaminating anything else in the fridge if it were to drip, if it were to leak. But you should defrost it in a leak-proof container and use it up within a certain amount of time, which is probably no more than 2 days ideally. So you keep it nice. And if you know that one of these 500 gram packets is way too big for your dog and it's going to take you 4 days to get through it, you've got the 200 gram packets, which could be a consideration for you. Also, you would defrost it, semi-defrost it, put a knife through it and cut it into portions and refreeze those other portions until you need them. So that's another way of doing it. Or you could use that time to stuff it into like a plate like this, or maybe a Kong or a licky mat, put it back in the freezer until you're ready to use it again. So that would be another option for you. So yeah, when you've got kids around, you need to make sure that you and they are aware, obviously, not to play around with the dog's faces, because that's where any bacteria might be sitting. But if you do notice your dog lick your child's face, it happens all over the place, just give them a wipe. You can, some people do, have little wipes for their dog's faces once they've eaten. That could be an option for you. You have to do what's right for you in your home. Okay, so safety. Yeah, just be assured that we test all of our products correctly. Laboratory testing, they do test for salmonella and they test for enterobacteriosis. So those two things are tested for in our foods. And if we ever have any issues, which we rarely do, we do recall, which we have not done for years so far. So touch wood. We haven't had any issues at all, because our food is treated correctly. We use it within the time. It gives you the time as well. So we make sure that the processing time also considers the amount of time that you need to have it at home. So nothing is used on its end date. We would use it up within that time. So I've probably taken up enough of your time today, but thank you very much for joining me. I was going to talk about bone broth, but I haven't got time. I will go through that another day. That's for another day. We've got bone broth. We've got something else to go over, which is in relation to how much chicken to feed and how many other things to feed and what creates allergies and what creates things called leaky gut. So I've got that to go over another time, and we can do that with you. So if you've got any queries or questions about anything, just do send it on to us. We'd be happy to try our best to research it if we don't know about it, and we'll look into it and then hopefully be able to give you an informative video on some things that you can do in your home related to raw feeding, related to dogs. We're no experts in anything in particular, if that makes sense, but so dog training and that sort of thing is probably not our bag. But if you want to know about feeding a raw diet to a dog, then do get in touch, because we'll be really happy to help you. Hopefully we get to see you over the weekend. Our shops are open all weekend. Don't forget Westmore's is now open on a Sunday as well, so that would be amazing if you could come along and support us for that. We've got Christchurch and Pamp Hill also open on Sunday. We're open tomorrow on Saturday. Most stores are open, and actually what we are doing is we're going to open Upton store a bit earlier as well, so that will be open from 9 going forward from now. We get quite a few people turning up early for that, so now Upton will be open from 9 till 1 instead of 10. Thank you very much for joining me, and have a great evening.